Yeah, I'll react to that, sure. British versus American World War I bombing tactics. Okay. Simple history. Hey guys, my name's Connor. If you're new, original link to the video, top of the description. One wanted to do daytime and one wanted to do nighttime. I forget which is which, but I think that's all I remember.
Bombing in World War
Maybe I'm wrong.
II. One of the most effective and controversial tools used by the Allies during the Second World War was a sustained strategic bombing campaign. Long-range heavy bombers would strike targets deep within Germany, intending to destroy or disrupt vital infrastructure and cripple German morale. Both the Americans and the British agreed on the importance of strategic bombing, though they differed greatly in how such a campaign would be conducted and the methods that would be utilized. The British RAF, utilizing long-range bombers such as the Avro Lancaster, preferred the use of nighttime bombing runs, while their counterparts, the American U.S. Army Air Force, made extensive use of the Boeing B-17 Flying Fortress and the consolidated B-24 Liberator during daylight raids. Each would have their own rationale for flying either day or night. In January 1943, the Casablanca Directive was issued. It was a joint British-American plan that outlined an around-the-clock bombing campaign.
Wait, so would you want to do blue paint on the bottom of the plane for daytime raids and black or gray paint for nighttime raids for camouflage? No.
It was a joint British-American plan that outlined an around-the-clock bombing campaign designed to ensure the, quote, destruction and dislocation of the German military, industrial, and economic system, and the undermining of the morale of the German people, to the point where their capacity for armed resistance is fatally weakened, end quote. During the day, German skies would...
Was that like just a way of saying bomb them for 24/7 until they give up?
Be darkened by flights of American bombers, while during the day, German skies would be darkened by flights of American bombers, while the nights would be handled by the British. The Americans' main objective, in theory, was the precise destruction of specific targets to smash German industry, such as factories, while limiting collateral damage. In order to hit their targets with as much accuracy as possible, the bombers would make use of the latest targeting instruments, such as the Norden bomb sight. The Norden bomb sight was imbued with mythical qualities, believed to be able to aim a bomb into a pickle barrel. This was the scalpel of the air campaign. Precision and accuracy are essential when solving problems, whether navigating strategic air campaigns or learning complex concepts.
And
that's where brilliant comes in.
I got freaked out for a second. I've seen a lot of simple history videos and never seen one of the animated characters turn to me. Okay, sorry, we're going through, obviously.
That focuses on building.
If you're interested in this, guys, and you want to get it and you learned it here, make sure to use their promo codes and links.
Understanding from the ground up. Through interactive problem solving, their lessons are 6 times more effective than traditional video lectures. Their content's created by a team of award-winning experts from renowned institutions like MIT, Microsoft, and Google. Brilliant emphasizes critical thinking over memorization, offering problem-solving activities that improve both your knowledge and reasoning skills. The platform encourages daily learning with bite-sized lessons that fit into any schedule, providing a productive alternative to mindless scrolling. And speaking of critical thinking and problem solving, consider the story of these bomber planes. To protect bombers from enemy fire, engineers analyzed returning planes to determine which parts were most often hit, planning to add...
And they realized, sorry, they're going to say it, that the planes that returned, clearly they could be shot in the areas they were shot and still survive, whereas the places they weren't shot
armor there. However, this approach only looked
probably
at planes
the ones that didn't
made it
make it back,
ignoring those that
did get shot there.
Mathematician Abraham Wald identified this
myself.
as survivorship bias. Focusing on only survivors skewed the data analysis. He realized that planes that didn't return might have been hit in critical areas that surviving planes weren't. Wald proposed reinforcing the spots with little or no damage on the returning planes, as these could be the critical areas where hits would lead to destruction. His insight that led to better armor strategies, increasing
Smart.
bomber survivability. One of Brilliant's key courses, Exploring Data Visually, teaches you to analyze data in a similar way, using various visualizations like scatter plots and histograms. You'll also learn to apply data transformations, choose the best visualization for your data, and use logarithmic scales when appropriate to better represent data-driven insights. To try everything that Brilliant has to offer for free for a full 30 days, visit brilliant.org/simplehistory or click on the link in the description. You'll also get 20% off an annual premium subscription. Now, back to it.
Let's go.
In contrast, where the Americans could drop their payloads with remarkable accuracy, instead of a specific factory or industrial complex, the target would be entire cities, completely destroying the infrastructure necessary to continue the war effort. In response to the Blitz, a concentrated effort against British cities by the Luftwaffe, the aim was also to break the morale of the German population, forcing them to capitulate. This practice, known as
Guys, I heard that they wouldn't actually shoot falling paratroopers when they're falling, they've already dropped from the plane because it's too easy of a target. But I find that hard to believe. Invading army is coming over to conquer you, and you're like, I can't hit the people that are deployed with their parachutes.
break the morale of the
I
German
don't know if that's
population,
true.
forcing
I
them to
heard it.
capitulate. This practice, known as saturation or area bombing, was the sledgehammer of the air campaign. Of course, in order to hit a target, the bomber crews would actually have to see their target. By operating in daylight, the Americans could navigate towards their objective more easily, and using their Norden bomb sites, more effectively target specific locations, while avoiding non-objective buildings, at least in theory. In the realities of combat, the bombardier's aim would be thrown off by weather conditions, enemy action, and target misidentification. It was estimated that only around 14% of bombs dropped fell within 1,000 feet of their objective in early 1943, but up to 44% in 1945. In Japan, where the wind scattered bombs more at high altitudes, the USAAF were forced to switch to lower altitude nighttime bombing. The British nighttime operations were forced to forego hitting something as specific as a single factory, which would be difficult in the darkness, and even more so when the cities were darkened under blackout conditions. Furthermore, area bombing was less reliant on possibly faulty intelligence. Maps, photographs, and other forms of information about a potential target could be misleading, meaning that even the most precise and surgical strike could simply have hit the wrong target. By spreading their payloads over a wider area, British bomber formations ensured that at least something important would be hit. One of the biggest risks to any bombing mission was the presence of Luftwaffe fighters, such as the Bf-109. In spite of the extensive defensive armament on their bombers, up to 13 50-caliber machine guns on the B-17, German fighters exacted a devastating toll on the bombers. The obvious solution to this issue was to send their own fighter escorts to fend off the enemy aircraft. The problem was that early in the war, there was no fighter plane that could match the range of the bombers so far into Germany. Once the fighters, such as the Republic P-47 Thunderbolt, reached the limit of their operational range, they would be forced to turn back. Once the escorts were gone, the bomber formations would be swarmed.
So, would simply extending the wings of the fighters make their range further? But it would also, I feel like the whole point of a fighter is maneuverability, and I'm sure that would very much. So, bombers are more never mind. I said what I was going to say, but that obviously you want a fighter to be a fighter, not a bomber. Forget it.
This problem would be solved later in the war with the introduction of external drop fuel tanks, as well as the creation of a long-range fighter, the P-51 Mustang. Flying in dense formations, allowing the guns to cover.
I would love to know what modifications made it able to be more long range.
One another. The bombers were
while keeping it
flying in dense
like
formations, allowing the guns to cover one another. The bombers were also vulnerable to flak guns, which could easily see the planes as they flew overhead. The RAF Lancasters also operated.
So the flak guns, do they just explode? Because I'm like, all right. first looking at something like this, I'm like, why would you want to use, if you're trying to hit something in the sky, far away, far up, why would you want to use one big projectile, right? That seems like the worst thing you could do. But I'm assuming they have modifications that explode near it or something and have like a grenade effect.
Easily see the planes as they flew overhead. The RAF Lancasters also operated outside the range of fighter escorts, such as the Supermarine Spitfire, though by operating at night they received much less opposition from German fighters. The flak guns, which could easily see the American bombers, even at high levels, were forced to rely on searchlights to detect.
Ooh, would you also go on more like moonless nights? Because I feel like it'd be a lot easier to see you if, you have a bright full moon above the aircraft.
Easily see the American bombers, even at high levels, were forced to rely on searchlights to detect incoming British aircraft. The Lancaster also lacked the same defensive features as the Flying Fortress, foregoing the same defensive armament with 8 machine guns in favor of a larger payload capacity. With more limited defensive armament, the most effective way to avoid the enemy was to avoid detection as much as possible, using the cover of darkness as a screen to stay safe from the enemy. The larger payload meant more destructive potential with each bombing run. Overall, the cost of daylight bombing runs was immense. Over the course of the war, the 8th Air Force alone, which performed the majority of raids over Germany, lost 26,000 men, more than the Marine Corps during the entire war, with total U.S. AAF losses placed at 40,000 dead, 18,000 wounded, and around 12,000 captured. In August 1943, a major raid meant to disrupt German aircraft production was launched. The targets would be a Messerschmitt plant in Regensburg and a ball bearing factory in Schweinfurt. Once they were over their target, the unescorted bombers were...
I want to know what ball bearings seem to be much more important than how they seem to be when I hear it, like ball bearings. Like, I'm sure they're used in a lot of things, but what exactly on the aircraft is utilizing ball bearings?
Swarmed by Luftwaffe fighters and were torn apart. Of the 367 bombers that participated in the raid, a staggering 147 were shot down.
Like, I'd imagine you would need them on like a swivel turret or something, but...
Participated in the raid, a staggering 147 were shot down. In a later follow-up strike against Schweinfurt, of the 291 bombers deployed, 60 were shot down, 17 crashed in England, and 121 were in need of vital repairs. Known as Black Thursday, it was clear that the defensive guns of the American bombers were insufficient to keep the aircraft safe, and unescorted missions were suspended. British night raids were marginally safer, being shielded by the cover of darkness, though they also suffered heavy casualties. German fighters, flak batteries, and other anti-air defenses took their toll, and by the end of the war, the RAF had lost over 57,000 men, with 8,400 wounded and just under 10,000 made prisoner. To this day, there is debate over which method was more effective. American daylight bombing was, at least in theory, more precise, enabling the Allies to grind down German industry. By cutting off this logistical element, the Wehrmacht would no longer be able to operate, and their war effort would grind to a halt. By area bombing at night, the RAF destroyed major portions of German infrastructure.
I'm sure it would have a psychological effect too, just knowing that, at 24 hours of the day, you have to worry about
forcing
bombs.
Germany to divert resources towards repairing the damage rather than the war effort. Perhaps the most controversial aspect of the bombing campaign was the effect on civilians. While American precision bombing did try to target strategic locations, the realities of war meant that large portions of their payloads would fall on civilian areas. The area bombing of the British, however, guaranteed that civilians would be killed in raids. This was seen as justifiable, as no doubt many of those killed were factory workers, playing a vital role in the war effort. It was also believed that by hitting a civilian area, German morale would collapse and their desire to continue the war would diminish. In probably the most infamous example, on February 13, 1945, the city of Dresden would be targeted. The first wave of RAF Lancaster bombers dropped high explosive and incendiary bombs on the city, dropping 880 tons on the city center. A firestorm erupted and flames tore through the city.
I'm sure even for the most moral of armies, if you know, even if you're not in trying to kill civilians, if it's between life and death of your country, you know, falling into enemy hands, losing the war, I don't think you're really going to be thinking about unintentional civilian casualties.
With this and subsequent British and American raids over the next few days, left Dresden, the 7th largest German city, in ruins, with between 25 to 35,000 dead. Though this was the most famous example, many other cities were targeted in a similar fashion, and anywhere between 750,000 and 1 million German civilians were killed as a result of the air campaign.
Jeez.
Overall, the daytime raids by the U.S. Army Air Force and night raids by the RAF were a vital part of the Allied war effort, each with their own pros and cons. Which method was more effective was debated at the time, and will no doubt continue to be a source of discussion into the future.
Super cool, guys. Well, not super cool, actually. It's terrifying. Not super cool. Super not cool. But interesting. Love y'all. Hope you guys are all doing well. Would appreciate any questions, any answers to my questions down below. Any comments at all. You guys are always great with that. See you guys next time. Bye.